Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 17 of the Giro d'Italia 2023. Today's stage, just about 200 kilometers long, about 125 miles in length. It should be one for the sprinters, right? Well, we don't really know because we're far into a grand tour. Teams have exploded with riders going home with COVID and riders going home from all the rain and crashes that they had throughout this first 2 weeks of racing here at the Giro. So when the racing comes on and you start seeing riders attack, once we start seeing Jaco Alula following attacks up the road, you got to wonder what's going to happen. Well, not for very long, because then you start looking back there and you see Bahrain Victorious pulling things back together. We'll see 4 riders go up the road. It's going to be Leysen from Albacete de Koenig, Champion from Cofidis, Sevilla from Iolo Cometas up there, and Charlie Quarterman from Coratec. That'll be 4 riders going up the road early, very, very early in this stage 17 of the Giro. But when you look behind, Jaco Alula, they don't like this. They're actually sending guys up the road. At some point in time, it's Michael Matthew going up the road. If you look on his wheel, that's Johnny Milan there, the sprint points competition leader here for Bahrain Victorious, following Michael Matthews. Well, we'll see a little bit of arguing going on, or a little bit of discussion with Michael Matthews later when the peloton sits up and goes curb to curb. We see Johnny Milan looking over there to the right at Michael Matthews as he's looking to the left. Michael Matthews, are you an amateur knucklehead here? What are you thinking? You are a sprinter. Now, I know you haven't been up there with the best sprinters in the world when we're talking about like a Tour de France field or a bunch sprint when everybody's completely fresh. But man, this is the 3rd week of the Giro d'Italia 2023. And everybody's tired. Legs are getting tired. Sprinters are disappearing like flies left and right throughout the first 2 weeks of this Giro. So when you start looking at this field, I'm thinking Michael Matthews, with a little bit of help and a little bit of luck, you could win a stage like today. But you can't win if you're a knucklehead trying to go up the road in the breakaway. Even if you get up there, they're just going to leave you up there, which honestly, when I'm sitting up here on the Butterfly Effect, when I'm looking at the other sprinters chasing Michael Matthews down, you could have just left him up there and just go ahead and let him burn his legs out. Instead, like I said, everything finally goes curb to curb. The 4 riders up the front, they go off the road. They go up the road. Sorry, not off the road. They go up the road, and then you'll see that the pace is going pretty decent by the 4 riders, but you see a little bit of jokester back there with Thomas Champion from Cofidis as he's resting his elbow on his handlebar there and on his chin, smiling over at the cameras. This kind of day, you do whatever it takes to basically use up your time and get through it mentally. I kind of hated these stages. I'd hear the guys up on the GCN commentator talk about how they love these stages and even liked it better when there is no cameras and the pace would go slower, and they talk all day long. Me personally, I was always business. I like to get in here, get the pace going down hard, and I like the race to be exciting from start to finish if it can be. And so when I'm seeing today's stage, I'm thinking, well, they're going pretty good pace, so this is all right. But there's still time to look over when you're going through the towns and check out the people heading down the raft. You see, of course, that it's Marco Frigo that's up there, and he lives in this part of town, so he's gonna go over and see his family and celebrate with them, and then he's gonna jump back on his bike and he's gonna haul back down the road and catch up to the back of the peloton. Now, the whole time, these 4 riders, they're only given about a 3-minute gap maximum, but honestly, most of the time, it's about 1:30 to 2-minute gap on the 4 riders up front. And with the exception of one of the sprint competition lines, that was about all that was happening in today's stage. But if I back the stage all the way up before it began, in the neutral section anyways, that's Mark Cavendish that was adjusting his saddle. Now, the Astana rider, I've seen this all the time from him. He gets incredibly nervous, and for some reason, it's always his saddle that gets picked on. It can't possibly be off as many times as I've seen Mark Cavendish, the British road champion, in his jersey there, adjust his saddle. Every time it's an important stage, you always see this cat on the side of the road trying to adjust his bike. He must be incredibly nervous. Now, let's get back up to the action up front, because with about 22 kilometers to go, we're going to see Leysen from Albacete de Koenig. He's going to dislodge his 3 companions as they go back to the peloton, but he's only got about a 20-second gap. Things get a little more interesting as this gap gets up to about a minute. But when we look back there, it's curb to curb. We see the sprinter team still pulling on the front. Was Movistar, was DSM, Bahrain Victorious, and of course Astana that were pulling throughout the whole part of this stage. Now as it starts going curb to curb, we start seeing a few of the GC teams up there. because Ineos are always represented. And Bahrain Victorious, they got multiple options because they got a sprint rider, of course, Johnny Milan, and the sprint points competition jersey. But then they got GC guys, so they got a lot of reason to stay at the front. Every time with about 10 kilometers to go, though, and the camera starts fading back, especially once we get under 9, that's when you see Jumbo-Visma, and they're a little bit towards the middle, if not the back end of the peloton. This looks a little bit interesting when you talk about having a rider like Primož Roglič, third on the general classification, and he's 60 guys back in the peloton. We start looking up front with 5 kilometers to go. Lacen, the Alpecin de Koenig rider, will get all wrapped up, and now Team Ineos is on the front with 3 riders, Geraint Thomas sitting in 3rd position. His last rider, Ben Swift, will get him all the way into about 3 kilometers to go. Then they start getting swarmed big time as we see Geraint Thomas start hitting the board button, thinking like, I don't need to be at the front anymore, because today's finish is going to be exciting. When we're talking about the last 3 kilometers, there's a left, followed by another left, followed by a right, followed by left, followed by another left that's coming at about 650 meters to go, and then straight into the finish of today's stage. So as we go back to just under 3 kilometers to go, and you see Geraint Thomas and Ineos and Ben Swift on the front, who did a really good job for Geraint Thomas to get him under the 3K banner rule here, as they're getting swarmed with FDJ on one side, and of course with the sprinter teams on the other going up the right side. We know with the board button, this is an intelligent decision from Ineos rider because he wants to get out of the way. Now, right after he starts to get swarmed, look, just a few hundred meters later, DSM with 3 riders are flying up the left side of the road in the gutter there, because they know with 2 kilometers to go, that's when all the crazy turns start coming into effect here at the finish of today's 17 Giro stage. Now, if we go back to that picture, you look at the DSM rider, that's Maurice Mayhofer on the front there. Second wheel, Alberto Danesi. Third wheel there, Nicolas Markel. Now, those 3 riders are flying up the left side, and then look, the second rider, he sits up. That's Alberto Danesi, their sprinter. He sits up, looks back. He rotates position. This is good tactical racing here from the sprinter Alberto Danesi. He slides over to the right. He lets Nicolas slide up to 2nd position. Now he's 3rd. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the right side of the road, because there's some chaos happening over there, right? We see Mark Cavendish there. He's sitting on the wheel of Luis Leon Sanchez, the Spanish lead-out man that's trying to help Cavendish stay at the front. Not really a lead-out man, just trying to get him deep in here. Only problem is, look at the elbow flick there of Luis Leon Sanchez as he's flicking his left elbow. He thinks Mark Cavendish is on the left side, but Mark has actually moved over to the right, and Sanchez is moving over to his right. Now, Cavendish has to slot through that little gap there, and then he's going to dive from the right side of the road back into the center of the peloton, just behind Johnny Milan, who's still sitting about 6th, 7th spot back there in the middle of the peloton, as we see Cavendish is starting to get a little bit blocked in there. Now up front, what's happening? Well, the second sprinter for DSM, who brought his 2 companions up with him, he's getting ready to go into this first left turn with 2 kilometers to go. With Mayhofer on the front, with Nicolas sitting 2nd wheel, and with the sprinter Alberto Danesi 3rd. DSM's looking okay, but they got one problem. It's 2 kilometers to go. Mayhofer's already been on the front for about 500 meters, bringing up his 2 companions all the way into this 2 kilometer to go turn, left turn that is. You look back behind, you see it's Jaco Alula there. Now you look further back behind that, all of a sudden Cavendish is way back there. Johnny Milan's not in the best of positions. He's sitting around 12th back there, and he doesn't have his lead out man, Andre Pasqualon, near him. They'll come out of that left. DSM rider Mayhofer, remember, he's a pure sprinter, but he knows they need to get through these first 2 turns. Only problem is, Alberto Danesi knows with only 3 riders and one starting to get tired on the front, and you got about 1.8 kilometers to go. This is a math problem right here. You're going to need some help at the front. Now, as we're getting ready to go in these next turns, look what's happening over there on the left side of the road, because that's Pasqualon. He's further back behind his sprinter, Johnny Milan, and he's trying to get up to him. It's about 1.8 kilometers to go now, and as we're coming in to the next turn, we'll see Pasqualon there past Johnny Milan, and Johnny Milan doesn't slide on. Johnny Milan kind of goes to the right because the inside right turn's coming up at 1.4 kilometers to go. Johnny goes the inside. Pasqualon's going on the outside of the turn, and then they'll kind of sort of meet up just after that. But up front, what's going to happen? Well, DSM's going to get a little bit of help from Jaco Alula. Jaco Alula had 3 riders up front, like I already told you, but they're a little bit separated with 1 in front and 2 in back. That's Michael Hepburn there staying with Michael Matthews. Now we look a little bit further up. DSM riders getting some help as we see Mayhofer's pulling off hard to the left, and then Jayco Alula riders hopping on the front. This is going to help out DSM a little bit because now all of a sudden we're talking about another fresh rider at the front, so 2 riders to help Alberto Danese get deeper into this stage 17 field sprint that's coming for sure. As we come into the next left turn with 1.2 kilometers to go, Jayco on the front, he's done, and now Nicholas has to go full gas for a sprinter. He's always checking back, making sure his sprinter's there as he's on the front, swinging as hard as he can here to get everything out of the pedals. Full gas going all the way into about 800 meters to go. Then we see him look back. He sees he's still got his sprinter, Alberto Danese, on his wheel, so he keeps chugging hard on the pedals. He'll go into the last and final left turn here with 650 meters to go. DSM are going 1 and 2, but still a little bit of a math problem for DSM Alberto Danese because he still needs somebody to lead him out down the straightaway. Well, as they come out of the final corner and the straight line starts happening, we look behind. All of a sudden, we see Jayco Alula. They start powering through. That's Michael Hepburn on the front for Michael Matthews. They're flying up the left side there, the DSM rider. And then look, Nicholas turns around, looks right over his shoulder, and he's yelling at Alberto Danese, "Man, you got to go. My legs are blowing." We look over to the left side. Who's on the Jayco Alula's train there? Well, that's Consoni from Cofidis, Simone Consoni, that is. He's got solid locked on the Michael Matthews wheel. We backed the film just a little bit further, and what was happening back there was we were coming into that final corner. Look at Johnny Milan. He's sitting way back there, like 10th spot back there. Johnny Milan is out of position. He had some help because he had his teammate back there, Pasqualone, but honestly, he never used his teammate throughout this section because they were always looked like they were miscommunicating. But we go back up to the front. The first guy to throw in the tack is going to be Albacine de Koenig rider. That's throwing in with about 375 meters to go. That's Alexander Kruger. Kruger looks back over his shoulder, realizes that he doesn't have Stefano Oldani, his sprinter, on his wheel, so he just pulls off hard left. It didn't even affect the Jayco train on the front because they never saw him. But what's happening in back? Well, Alberto Danese, he's starting to fly up fast on the Simone Consoni, the Cofidis rider's wheel, as he's starting to blow. Michael Matthews hits the accelerator gas at about 250, 275. It's a little ways out for Michael Matthews from Jayco Alula, but he's going full gas. As we see Michael Matthews going full gas, just behind, we see Alberto Danese. He's passing the Cofidis rider, Simone Consoni, who's coming off the gas and starting to fade. We look over to the left, Johnny Milan in the Sprint Leaders Points Competition jersey. Like I told you many times already here on stage 17, he's flying up the left side, but we look down, right down on the back wheel, center of the back wheel there is Michael Matthews. Of Michael Matthews is Alberto Danese. Now Alberto Danese is going to start acceleration with about 125 meters to go as he's going to the right. Johnny Milan's going to the left. 100 meters to go. Michael Matthews is still in the lead here on stage 17. We get to about 50 meters to go. They're going 3 wide. We got Johnny Milan on the left. We got Michael Matthews in the middle, who's doing a long, impressive lead out here on stage 17. And then to the right of him, Alberto Danese. Now, once they get to about 10 meters to go, we could tell it's going to be a bike throw. All of a sudden, we see all 3 riders throw the bike. We look over to the right, we look to the middle, we look to the center. It's hard to tell who won today's stage. But then when we see the close-up picture from the line, we know Alberto Danese, the DSM rider, will take the victory here on stage 17 by just a tire's width over Johnny Milan, the other Italian rider, second. And then Michael Matthews holds on to round out the podium. Bonifacio will finish 4th, the Intermarché rider, who did a stellar ride. He came from a little ways back and flew all the way from the left side through across the front of the peloton and then all the way to the left to get 4th on today's stage. Now, general classification, Geraint Thomas holds the race leader's pink jersey here for Ineos to continue it into tomorrow's mountainous stage 18. But before we get into that stage 18, let me point something out. As we look at Adam Blythe, the GCN commentator who's riding the back of the motorcycle throughout today's stage, at the finish, they're getting ready to interview him on his perspective of the race. And look over to our left side, his right. Well, that's Cavendish. Now, Adam Blythe, he doesn't want to get into it, right? He knows they're having some arguing over there. You see the eyes of Adam Blythe look over there to his right, checking out what's going on over there. But he won't stop talking for us to hear what's happening. What I saw as we saw Filippo Maglia, the Green Project rider, come up there to Cavendish is coming the opposite way. Cavendish basically looked like he just rammed his handlebars into Filippo's bars there as he made the Italian rider stop. They have a bit of an argument. We see Filippo Maglia, he'll finally look back at Cavendish and do the little Italian sign, hand sign like that, and then Mark Cavendish looks hard back over his shoulder to see what Maglia said to him. Man, this is my problem here with Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish was crashing everyone. Remember that stage up when they were in the rain, they're coming into the sprint. Mark Cavendish's back wheel slips. Then he decides to go back into the fast lane. Well, who did he crash over there? Well, that was Filippo, the other Filippo on Green Edge Project that he sent into the fencing and it took off all the skin on his elbows. He kept it up, and then Mark Cavendish crashed himself. But now all of a sudden, Mark Cavendish is flipping out on other Green Edge Project, Filippo Maglia, here at the end of the stage. I backed the camera all the way up many times throughout the stage to try to see from 3 kilometers ago all the way into the finish to find out what they were arguing about. That's what I like to do here on the Butterfly Effect, right? Bring some details. Well, every time I brought the camera back, I couldn't see any Green Edge Projects giving Mark Cavendish a hard time. In fact, when I bring it all the way back into about 2.5 kilometers to go before they went into that first left turn, Mark Cavendish's own teammate, Sanchez, was the one pushing him over to the curb because Mark went the wrong way as Sanchez went that same way to the right, and then it blocked him in. From that point on, Cavendish was 30 guys back throughout the whole stage. So I don't know what could have happened to the Green Project rider that could have caused Mark Cavendish to be so upset, because every time I look back in the cameras, what I could catch on camera anyways, I didn't see any fighting going on, and I never saw coming from 2.5 kilometers back of the finish of today's stage where Mark Cavendish in 30th position could have gotten up and won today's stage once he got lost back there at about 2.3 kilometers to go before the first left corner started at 2K. But this is always my dilemma here when you talk about Mark Cavendish. Remember, he just posted up that he's retiring 2 days ago on the rest day here of the Giro, so this will be his last Giro and his last Tour de France. I believe he's the greatest sprinter that the world of cycling has ever seen. But throughout my experience with Cavendish, he's always talking about how he's the greatest, and then nobody will work with him, any other teams in the early stages of the Tour de France back in the day when he was dominating it. And then he would cry that they wouldn't work. Then when everyone did work and he'd win, he'd brag about being the best in the world and how dominant his team is. And so the next day when nobody would work with his team, again, high roads, then he'd complain that nobody was working. So he's always either just talking up how great he is, and then when he doesn't get any help, which he shouldn't get any help because like he said, he is great and he's one of the best in the world, but he always has something to complain about. Back in the day when we were racing in London and we were doing the Tour de France, and he basically ran right up the backside there of Peter Sagan and then they relegated Peter Sagan and DQ'd him out of the Tour de France. That was Mark Cavendish's fault back there. I've seen a ton of times where Mark Cavendish is doing something ridiculous back there and then going at it with other riders in the peloton, and this is what I'm talking about. He's always nervous, always stressed out, and then at the end of today's stage, Mark, you were 30th. Unless I missed something throughout the cameras or the TV cameras missed something, I don't know how you were going to win from 30th being back there with 0 teammates while you were pushed into the right side curb there, and we haven't even started the first hard technical finish of this 2-kilometer finish on today's 17. So arguing with the Green Project rider here at the finish of stage 17, it just seems like a knucklehead move here. And Adam Blythe, if you're getting ready to come on air and say something, just pause for a minute. Man, you have control over the cameras. It was a pretty slow stage. Great finish here of stage 17. But Adam, if they're all arguing right next to you and it's Mark Cavendish, go ahead, stop talking and focus the cameras on them so we could all see what they're arguing about. Okay, man? Let's make this race a little more exciting. I'll take a little bit more information and excitement after the stage finishes here on stage 17 anytime. So the GCN commentators, Adam Blythe, for not just pausing when you know there's something going on over there, but it's Mark Cavendish, right? They're a British channel. They don't want to get yelled at. Adam Blythe doesn't want to get hated there from Mark Cavendish, so he just keeps jabbering on the front about something that happened in today's stage. Instead of pausing and going over what we really want to watch is Mark Cavendish arguing and find out the reasons why. That's my take up here on the butterfly effect. Tomorrow's going to be exciting as we get up into the big mountains. Can Ineos hold the pink race leader's jersey with Geraint Thomas? They only have 5 guys left. Jumbo-Visma, they looked awfully strange all the way at the back with under 6 kilometers to go throughout this final stage 17. So I wonder if there's something wrong with Primož Roglič. Well, we're going to find out in tomorrow's stage. And then UAE Team Emirates, they have looked like a dominant team here, certainly on yesterday's mountainous stage with Almeida going first on the stage. They look solid, so look for UAE Team Emirates and Jumbo-Visma to try to blow this race up tomorrow. Certainly UAE Team Emirates will, and Jumbo-Visma have to join in unless, of course, Primož Roglič is under the weather or something, and that would explain why Jumbo-Visma was so far back on today's stage coming in to finish. He didn't lose time. All the guys are still 1, 2, and 3 under 30 seconds in the top 3 positions here. But what was the dilemma of today's stage affecting Jumbo-Visma being all the way at the back? We might have to wait till tomorrow's mountainous stage to find out if Primož Roglič is sick or not. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.